I made a Life Size SAITAMA Animatronics using some Arduino and a 3D printed head, along with some custom parts.
I am so gonna catch you and kick your ass.
I used half-inch OSB wood to make the base. I just kinda eyeballed it and cut it to the size I think will fit. I found these end caps for the PVC pipe. It's great because it's got these flanges where I could screw them in. The screws that it actually came with were a little bit longer, so I had to cut them off and grind them flush. I'm using 1-inch PVC piping for my skeleton or the frame. Here I have no idea how big to make the waist, so I just kind of eyeballed it. Later on you'll see that I had to trim the waist down a lot just to make it look better. And here I'm installing the end caps for the bottom of the waist so I could put it on the legs. Now onto his 3D printed head. As you can see, it's got some obvious layer lines and a delaminated area. I used this foot sander to sand down the higher spots. I decided to use Bondo to fill in the gaps. I'm not great at using this stuff at all, so I tried my best to apply it as best as I could. I sprayed a couple coats of filler primer. My thought was to maybe it will cover the smaller gaps, but I had to repeat this process a few times. After a few rounds, I used this glazing putty and mixed it with acetone. I just basically applied it all over the head and sanded it down as best as I could. One last layer of primer, then onto the flesh paint. I didn't realize this, but if I had white primer, the flesh paint would have probably came out better. It came out a little darker than I expected. Now moving on to the mechanics. I designed these parts to hold these rotating servos, so then the head can turn left and right and also tilt from side to side. This is my first time making a duct tape body. I watched a few videos on YouTube on how to do it, and you will see here in just a minute that mine's turned out to be looking horrible. My mistake was not making sure that the saran wrap was wrinkle free, and so the other mistake that I made was when I applied the duct tape, I was rushing it. So there were a lot of wrinkles on the duct tape as well. Now the vest wouldn't stand on its own, so I had to cut some cardboard braces and taped it inside. Now I'm starting to assemble all the pieces together. All these pieces here I designed and 3D printed for their spine. My thought is to have these pieces turn the upper body left and right. I bought this thrust bearing off Amazon. I'm hoping that all the load from the upper body sitting on this single bearing would not cause any issue, and that the body will still turn freely. I probably overcomplicated things more than it should have been, and the design could have been more simple, but for now I'm gonna be rolling with this. This 20 kilogram servo should have enough torque to turn the body. Now I designed this custom gear, and in order for it to be pinned onto the shaft. The body and the head actually slid in pretty easy. Onto the electronics. I stacked the Arduino board and the speaker here, and on this side, the servo and MP3 board. And here I'm using extension wires for the servos inside of the head. Now to add power onto these components. Now that everything is wired up, some cable management will need to be done at a later time. Here I'm just installing the left and right arm. What I'm showing here are buck converters. They can adjust the voltage to the specification that you need. Time for a test run.
Can I have some tea?
Everything works pretty good. Not too bad for the first time.
Until he walks by and then jump out and confront him. No one's coming. What's with the attitude?
This servo actually is moving a little too fast for my liking. I would like to make it a little slower. These two servos, I believe, moved at the perfect speed. Now it's just time to finish dressing him up. Put the back head cover on and turn him on. And he's finished. A lot of lessons learned for next time for sure. Hope you enjoyed this simple build of Saitama.
Walks by and then jump out and confront him.